What's up again, guys? Brian here at 3TR, and I got another top 10s video for you. And this time we're going into video games this time around, and I will be giving you my top 10 most underrated games that I think are underrated. And starting off, I'm going to start off simple with an old origins to probably one of the most popular video game franchises of today, and that is Warcraft Humans vs. Orcs, or Human and Orcs, I think it's more pronounced. This was a simple point-and-click strategy game where I don't think it really had many online elements. It was strictly, you pick humans or orcs, 12 missions each, you versus the computer. There were multiple difficulties, and it's actually pretty difficult at times. You really have to use what resources you have. It's not like how it is today where it's not really about beating the game. It's simply about going on quests, buying the next expansion pack, and doing another quest. There actually is a beginning, a middle, and an end. And they generally do get harder, and they really force you to have to think outside the box, because depending on exactly what part of the landscape you're on the map really will have to determine your tactics, because you know, sometimes you might do something you think is going to work and it might really backfire, as I've experienced. This game did come out in '94, and I just don't think it's gotten the recognition that it deserves, so that's why it's number 10. Number 9 on my list is The Legend of Dragoon. Now, back in '97, when Final Fantasy VII was revolutionizing RPGs for the whole gaming world, there were a number of other RPGs which came out around this time, but for the most part, they were overlooked. Now, one of these games was Legend of Dragoon. It has some real interesting RPG elements. It keeps it basic. You could say that it somewhat mimics Final Fantasy's battle system combat. It does have a couple of special editions of its own. And if I remember correctly, it was really one of the first PlayStation 1 games that actually had voice with the characters, which was, you know, we didn't even get that in Final Fantasy until Final Fantasy X, so I guess it beat it to the punch. Number 8 on my list is Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles. Now, I know that some people have mixed feelings about the direction that they want to take Resident Evil, but with this particular game, it's more of a point-and-shoot game, the type of game that you would find at like the old-school arcade games. We have those big-ass guns. And in terms of story, it really adds a lot between the whole Leon and Krauser relationship. You actually get to see them work together and just see how well of a team that they used to be. And so if you've played Resident Evil 4, you could actually understand why Leon is, you know, a little bit saddened about having to kill his one-time friend. And it does kind of add some continuation storyline plot lines to the Veronica storyline in terms of that particular use of the virus. So that's why it's my number 8. Number 7 is The Saboteur. Now, I'm not sure if many people have even heard of this game, but this is a sandbox open world game. In which the objective is basically you play as a Frenchman who's in Paris and basically has to liberate it from Nazi control. The way the game works is that there's certain sections of the town which are colored in black and white, and that signifies that it's controlled by Nazis. Now, by destroying certain buildings, killing certain colonels or generals or commanding figures, or even rallying the citizens to stand up for the town, the city will actually turn into color, therefore declaring it free. And then once you've freed all of Paris, well, you're going to be known as a national hero. In terms of story, it's pretty straightforward in terms of revolutionary rebel stories, and it's certainly a must-play if you're just a fan of World War II like I am. Number 6 on my list is Max Payne 2. Now, I know that Max Payne 3 had some mixed reviews. If you saw my review on it, I think I gave it a pretty good score in terms of gameplay. But in terms of story for this one, it has much more of a noir love story. In fact, you actually have moments where you get to play as both Max Payne and Mona Sachs. Really adds for a really interesting storyline, and we see a different side to Max Payne than we did from the first game. Although he's much more of a tragic character, in this one he kind of leaves off in a much more hopeful state than he was than what would lead on to the third game, which is kind of confusing. And on a positive note, the end credits song was actually my introduction to one of my all-time favorite bands of all time. That's how I discovered them, and they've really been doing a great job since then. So that's why it's my number 6. Number 5 on my list is Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. This serves as a prequel story to the original Final Fantasy VII game, and this time you'll be playing as Zack. And in terms of story elements, it really kind of shows you the events leading up to Final Fantasy VII as for how exactly did Zack die, how did Cloud you know, get Mako poisoning and all this other stuff. You get to see Sephiroth go absolutely crazy. And in terms of the battle system, it really, in my opinion, is kind of the first example of how Final Fantasy Versus is going to play out. As in, it doesn't use your standard RPG elements in terms of the combat system. You actually get to press the attack button, the magic button, and the block button. And that's really what they've been pushing forward towards. So you could say that it had some Kingdom Hearts elements thrown in with Final Fantasy. So it's kind of maybe a test project for Versus whenever that comes out. Number 4 on my list, I know this might shock some of you people, but you'll be seeing this game again in another Top 10s video, and that is Star Wars Pod Racer. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, an Episode 1 video game based off pod racing. How stupid is that? But it's actually a really great racing game. It has multiple different worlds, have multiple different courses, and they're not just all on flat planes. Many times you'll have to go into zero gravity states, and it's really hard to pilot your ships. And the fact that there are multiple pods that you can customize, you can make them faster, slower, and throughout the very race itself, if your pod takes damage, you actually have the ability to repair your pod in mid-race. And so it definitely adds some tactical, strategic thinking in order to win these races, because you can't just power straight through them. It does take some strategy and memorization to know exactly when to make the right turns. Number 3 on my list is probably one of the best racing games that I've played on this gen, and I don't even really hear much about it, and that is called Split Second. Split Second is a game that kind of uses like a TV show element of basically taking street racing to the extreme. Now, as you play the game, you'll be able to, when you take down enemies, you'll have the ability to raise up your bar. This allows you to activate triggers and attacks and traps that pretty much take your enemies down, and when they go down, you simply take their position, and you have to basically fight your way to the end of the race. So it's not really a straight up race. You do have to fight your way through it. And I think that fighting your enemies instead of just simply trying to power straight through them and go faster is a much more enjoyable experience. Number 2 on my list is Final Fantasy X-2. Now, I would like to honestly say that I do acknowledge its problems in terms of storyline arcs, it really not taking a much more designed look, and really having a Charlie's Angels-like theme are some of its major flaws, but I think overall, it simply adds more to the Final Fantasy X story line. And since Final Fantasy X is my favorite Final Fantasy of all time, I was more than happy to really see where the story would pick up after the end of X-1, which kind of ended up on a sad note. And this kind of fixed that error and kind of ended it off on a happy note. And my number one, most anticipated, well, not most anticipated, most underrated game of all time is Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. I'm really sick and tired of people ignoring this game. This is an absolutely great addition to the Metal Gear Solid franchise, and it pisses me off more that they didn't even add this to the Metal Gear Solid Legacy Edition. I mean, heck, if they're going to add in VR missions, add in this game. In terms of story elements, it really shows you exactly how Big Boss developed the skills to start building squads and recruiting men, and how he found his calling from differing from where he was in Metal Gear Solid 3 to how he would be in Peace Walker. In fact, many people don't even know this, but a lot of those very elements they used in Peace Walker were first used in this game. And it's a very well told story, and it's just a little bit unfortunate that you can only play it on the PSP. It really should be much more expanded so that more people play about it and know about it. And it was the first game in the storyline to even have an official Metal Gear in the game, so, like, what the heck? So with that, that is my top 10 most underrated games that I've played. So tell me, what are some underrated games that you guys have played? I'd really like to know. And if some of them sound a bit interesting, I might actually give them a try and do a quick review on them. If you like this video, please like, comment down below, and please subscribe if you track to meet my future movie reviews, video game reviews, and more top 10s videos. And like always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.